Might you be able to assist Councillor Meredith's group?
The meeting is now streaming live to YouTube.
I'm in now.
Thank you very much.
Can
Thank
you
you,
put me on?
Tracy.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of Northampton Town Council. Could you please ensure that your mobile phones are switched off? Councillors, when indicating that you want to speak on an agenda item, please can you use the blue hand facility in Zoom? Move over to item 1, apologies for absence. I have only received apologies from Councillor Smith. Are there any more apologies?
No more apologies, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to
Chair, sorry, I was raising my hand. Councillor Flavel is running late and will join us as soon as she can.
Thank you for letting us know, Councillor Hallam. Item 3, declaration of interest. Do we have any declaration of interest? Thank you.
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you so much. Report of the Executive Committee. Item 4.
Sorry, Chair, have you done the minutes, Chair?
Oh, just a moment. Yes, my apologies. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting from 27th of January 2021. Can these be agreed?
Members could kindly show, please.
Agreed.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to declaration of interest. Item 3, declaration of interest. Do we have any declaration of interest? We'll move over to report of the Executive Committee. Item 4, I call upon Councillor Birch to present the report to the Town Council. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to propose that the report of the meeting of the Executive Committee held on the 18th of February be received and that the recommendations contained within be adopted. Could I point out a small error in the committee report? We have 2 items, 9 on page 7 and 8. The second on page 8 should be numbered 9A, just for your information and ease. Thank you. Councillor Meredith? Sorry, Councillor Marriott.
I thought you wanted the chair to call me, but there you go. Yeah, please a second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. I now propose to go through each of the minutes of the committee's report in turn, starting with minute 4 on page 5, delegation to committees and officers. This is a recommendation and includes Appendix A on page 9. Are there any speakers to the recommendation?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, before you proceed, if I might just mention to Mr. Bostock, we're still having Councillor Brian Markham is indicating that he can't access the meeting still. Could you perhaps call him and assist him with what he needs to do, please?
Yes, yeah, I'll do that now.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, I beg to...
No, that's fine. Before taking a vote, I invite Councillor Birch, if she wishes to exercise her mover's right of reply. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy for everyone's support on this, and can we move to the vote?
Thank you. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. We next come to minute 5, the mayoral allowance. I wish to declare a personal interest in this item and will therefore vacate the chair and ask the Deputy Chair, Councillor Meredith, to take this item on my behalf. Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. This item is also a recommendation. Are there any speakers to the recommendation?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Okay. Well, then we can accept the recommendation. So all those in favour of the recommendation, could you please raise your hand? I'd like to add at this point that as deputy chair, I can vote on this item. So I will vote for.
Sorry, Councillor Gareth Eales, were you voting for, sir?
It's very difficult for me to vote for the item because I've just realised I've actually got it in the papers in front of me. For
We're
some
on the
reason.
committee report, Councillor.
Yeah, it's not. Can't see it.
Why can't
It's on
you see
page
it?
6
Have you
of
not-
the agenda papers.
It's on the agenda, yeah.
It's item 5 on page 6 of the agenda papers and the report of the committee.
Perhaps we could read out the recommendation for clarity.
The recommendation, Chair, is that the Mayor's allowance be divided equally between a direct monthly payment to the Town Mayor and a contingency budget held by the Civic and Mayoral Officer to meet any civic and mayoral expenses agreed with the Town Mayor. I think all the members present have indicated they have, Chair. All the members are in favour, Mr. Deputy Chair.
Can I ask if, Gareth, are you voting?
He has voted in favour, sir.
Okay, well, is anybody against? No abstentions? Okay, the recommendation is carried. I now hand you back to Rutha. Are you there, Rutha?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
thank
thank you, Rutha.
Okay. Before taking, I now put the motion to, am I
We've
on the
done
right
that.
bit now? We've
No,
done that.
we're looking at,
The Mayor's chaplain.
that's right.
Okay. Are there any speakers to the recommendations?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you. We shall move on.
We can go straight to the vote then on the Mayor's chaplain, Chair.
Yes. Thank you. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's all in favour, Chair.
All in favour. Thank you.
Chair, I didn't vote because I wasn't there for it, so I did hear the vote, but I didn't actually vote because I wasn't there in time.
They've voted for Councillor Markham.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anyway, it's gone now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We now come to number 6, minute 6, Mayor's chaplain, which is a recommendation. Are there
What
any
you've just
speakers?
voted on, Chair.
Oh, apologies. Minute 7, for all information and is covered next on the agenda. Minute 8, transfer of property, is also covered later on the agenda. Are there any speakers to minute 9, information technology and accounting software?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you. Minute 9A, Freedom of Information Act, is a recommendation. Are there any speakers to the recommendation?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Thank you. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's carried, Chair.
Carried. Thank you. I declare the motion to be carried.
Chair, could
We'll
I
move
just
on-
raise a, Chair, sorry to interrupt. Could I just
Yes.
raise a point of order? Councillor Flavor is struggling to access the meeting. I
Okay.
wonder if Mr. Bostock would mind giving her a call.
Of
I'll
course.
do that now.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Councillor
move on.
Hack is having the same trouble, Ed, if you wouldn't mind.
I've just sent Councillor Hack the login details, Councillor.
Thank you. Next are minutes 10 and 11.
Councillor
any-
Meredith, Chair, excuse me, the Vice Chair is indicating.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Meredith.
You need to unmute, Mr. Vice Chair.
Councillor Meredith doesn't appear to be in the meeting at the moment.
Could I suggest we
locked down.
continue until
Okay.
Councillor Meredith is able to rejoin us, Chair?
Okay. Next on minutes 10 and 11. Are there any speakers to these matters?
Nobody's indicating, Chair.
Okay. That concludes the committee's report. Can we now have a vote on the substantive motion that the report be received and recommendations contained therein is as now amended be adopted? All those in favour, please raise your hands.
Rufa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Councillor Meredith.
My camera's not on. What I know you're in. I don't want to throw you out because I know how difficult it is talking over Zoom. But there's been a lot of problems getting on this town council meeting.
I know. Apologies.
Could it be sorted,
Yeah.
please?
Yes, I'm sure the officers are on it, Councillor Meredith.
Right. Can you put my
Please
camera
take them.
on?
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you,
sure they
councillors
will.
who voted. Whilst Mr Bostock attempts to assist Councillor Meredith in having, here we are. Councillor Meredith, were you in favour of the committee's report being received?
Yes, I was. Yes.
All the members have voted in favour.
Thank you.
Yeah, before you carry on, can I just make the point? The reason why, when I read the papers on over the weekend, I read the bit about the mayoral allowance. But the reason why I want to glance my eye over it again is just before we had a vote. The reason I couldn't find it is because the item for agenda item 4 is built within agenda item 5. So I think it's just the way the papers have been constructed, the way the agenda has been constructed. It doesn't really flow logically. So can we just try to avoid that in future, please?
I'll make sure that happens next time,
Well,
Gareth.
can
Thank you for pointing
I
that
just
out.
make a comment, if I may, please, Chair?
Yeah.
Because under your constitution, Councillor, all the matters of all the business of committees are reported directly to the council. So the council will, going forward, have the minutes of all the committee meetings that preceded the council, so that the general business and recommendations from committees will appear on the agenda in this form under your current arrangements. If you, perhaps offline, we can discuss this. If you, we can talk about it rather than delay this meeting, and I can report back to the committee.
I'll happily talk to you about it. It sounds like it'd be a fascinating chat. But we can do that. No problem.
I always enjoy
pointing that out.
fascinating chats, Councillor.
Thank you, Gareth. Right, move on to item 5, Councillor's Allowance. Item 5, the report of the Independent Parish Remuneration Panel. I am delighted to welcome Mr. John Cade, the chair of the panel, to our meeting and to invite him to present the panel's report. Mr. Cade, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Jolly good. Good evening. I'd like just to highlight a few points from our report, if I could, on behalf of the panel. The first thing is, what you're obviously aware is you will decide allowances, but you have to have regard to what we as an independent panel actually advise and recommend. Our sections 2 and 3, we talked a bit about background. And if I can just highlight a few paragraphs in that. Paragraph 3.3, apart from paying parish travelling and subsistence allowances under the particular regulations and chairman's mayor's allowance, which you have already been considering, parish councils can only pay parish basic allowances. The rate of allowances paid to councillors other than the chairman mayor must be the same, and any member can waive some or all of the allowance to which they are entitled. There's no provision to pay for special responsibility allowances like to a leader, which can exist and does exist within principal councils, and also, which is a particular concern to us as a panel, there is no provision to pay for dependent carers allowance, which we see as a really important allowance to not prohibit people from actually, first of all, want to become a councillor and then attending a meeting. That is obviously available under for the principal councils. Section 4, we talk about our ways of working, and it's really important to us that every councillor has the opportunity to submit evidence to us, and we're really grateful for all those who have given evidence, and we're actually showing those within our report who gave evidence. Also like to extend our thanks to Tracy, Laurie and Maisie for the support that they actually gave us in relation to that. In that section, we also show, which was helpfully provided by Richard, some comparative data for other large town councils. So you can see other figures being made. Interesting for me, until your town council established in the form it is, Sutton Coldfield was the largest town council, so the population just over 100,000, and I live in Sutton Coldfield, and many of the issues I know you're addressing at the moment were issues I recognise in my own area. Section 5, we address our findings, and the first thing we say, we are very much aware that members' allowances is a matter for strong debate within town councils, not just town councils, but principal councils actually as well. And as we recall there, a very contentious issue. One view is that members enter politics to serve the community, not for financial gain. So the role should not attract levels of remuneration that could encourage people to stand for the wrong reasons. In contrast, the alternative view is that current level of allowances does not present anything near a living wage for principal councils and for other areas the chance to attend, without some means of defraying costs. And the costs, like as mentioned, there is no ability to obey a separate carer's allowance as part of that, then this needs to actually come forward as part of that. In the evidence we received, almost without exception, everyone actually said to us they felt that an allowance should actually be paid in relation to it. And as you can see, our recommendation to you is that there should be an allowance of £1,200 per annum. I just want to draw attention also, if I can, to paragraph 5.6. As a panel, we always try to recommend some form of index linking, because this means that the allowances can move steadily in line with any changes of inflation, and there's not sudden jerks there. At the meeting, we weren't sure whether we could index link. That has now been clarified. So I'd like to add, Chair, at the end of the meeting, an additional recommendation to facilitate that. You can see then we move on to travelling allowance and subsistence allowances, and we recommend that those be paid at the levels we indicate there. So just in some recommendations, that a basic allowance of £1,200 per annum be paid to Northampton Town councillors elected from May 2021, that travelling allowances as detailed in paragraph 6.2 of our report be paid for agreed approved duties, and thirdly, that subsistence allowance as detailed in paragraph 7 of our report be paid again for approved duties. And the one I want to add, please, is that the basic allowance be index linked to any annual pay awards for officers of West Northamptonshire Council, that the basic allowance be index linked to any annual pay awards for officers of West Northamptonshire Council. Happy to try and answer any questions you might have, members.
Thank you, Mr. Cade. Before I ask the speakers to the panel's recommendations, could I first ask if there are any questions from Mr. Cade?
Nobody's indicating via the blue hand, and I can't see anybody with their hands up, Chair. Oh, Councillor Brian Markham is now.
Okay, Councillor Markham. Are you there, Councillor Markham?
Councillor Markham's on mute.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Cade, on the travelling allowances, it was, and I'm reading this again, these approved duties I take it the travelling allowance would only apply if councillor had to go to a conference or training or something. It's not full. It's not just for getting to and from regular meetings, or indeed maybe attending a planning site visit or whatever. Thank you.
Your point is absolutely right. There needs to be clarity about what approved duties are, and that needs to be agreed by yourselves as a town council, what those approved duties are. It needs to be transparent and very clear.
Any more speakers?
Nobody appears to be indicating, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cade, and please pass on our thanks to your fellow panel members for their deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers on this report and its recommendations? Over to Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Cade, for your comments and for all the work of your panel. I'm pleased to propose that the recommendations in this report, including that the proposed allowance be index linked to the annual increases agreed for the NJC staff salaries, be adopted. Could I also clarify Councillor Markham's comment and the recommendations of 8.2 and 8.3 on page 25? The term approved duties only includes duties undertaken outside the area of the town council. Thank you.
Councillor Marriott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Pleased to second and reserve my right to speak later if necessary.
Thank you. Before I take a vote, I ask Councillor Birch if she wishes to exercise her right of reply.
Chair, I don't know if any other member wishes to speak. Excuse me, Chair.
Okay.
Nobody's. Oh, Councillor Gareth Eales and Councillor James Hill have just indicated to speak.
Councillor Eales.
Yeah, I'd like to propose an additional recommendation, and I'd like a vote on that, on whether to insert that recommendation before we go to a substantive vote. I think Mr. Cade is right. This is a delicate issue, to be charitable. Always is. But I would like to propose that there be a further recommendation put in there that any councillors elected in May 2021, if they wish to forego the £1,200 allowance and have that transferred to their community fund allowance, that should be permitted. I expect the response to that to be, well, councillor, if you get elected in May, you could always give that money to charity. But if I don't wish, let's be optimistic and say I do get elected. If I don't wish to take that as an income, I don't see why that money should be taxed and the taxpayer be denied. If I wish to flow that fund through to benefit my community, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I would like that option. It's completely optional. Some people's circumstances are different. I think that should be included. So if people that are on the unitary as well can decide whether they wish to take that money or not, and if they don't, then it should be their community that benefits, not HMRC.
Thank you.
So I'll need a seconder for that.
Yes, Chair, there needs to be a seconder for that amendment.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
Second that, Chair.
Who's that?
Councillor Hill.
Councillor Hill has seconded.
Got loads of them.
Would you like to speak now, Councillor Hill?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Do you want to take the vote first, or?
No, we will have the comments first, Councillor, and then a vote on the amendment.
Yeah.
No, just to say thank you for a really good report. I think as Councillor Eales mentioned in the previous meeting, I think that was one of the issues regarding the council allowance, is the fact that it needs to be assessed by an independent body. And obviously that's what this provides. I mean, myself personally, I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of council allowances at this level of tier of government. But I accept that, this report has been done in a reasonable and fair way. So how the vote goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers?
Councillor Brian Markham.
Councillor Markham.
As far as the amendment goes, Chair, I totally agree. I think if it is party at all, I think we're probably all in favour. I hope everybody supports the amendment necessary, because yes, I might say, well, I don't want the £1,200, but let's make sure we know how it can be used from that. Yes, so I very much support the amendment.
Councillor Janice Duffy is indicating, and Councillor Jane Birch.
Councillor Duffy.
Councillor Duffy, you're on mute.
I'd just like to say that in the more prosperous sections of the town council, if the councillor is allowed to pass it on to the allowance to be used within his section, that would be, rather than putting it back into the pot of the town council, that would increase the inequality between the different sections of the town council. I mean, sorry to be so vague, but if a councillor doesn't have to take his allowance because he's prosperous enough not to have to take that allowance, and then applies it to his section of the town council, that deprives the town council from putting the money to the most deprived areas or the most needy areas. And it seems to me that that would increase the inequality between the parts of the town council. Whereas the prosperous areas would have the addition of the councillors' allowance that was denied. And I'd rather it be put back into the pot of the town council to decide which is the most needy place to put that money. Is that confusing? Does anybody understand what I'm trying to say?
I think we know what you're trying to say, Councillor Duffy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. One of the really admirable functions of the
Councillor Birch, I beg your pardon, Councillor Birch, you proposed the original motion. We're speaking on an amendment. Yes. And if you close the debate now, I think there are some other councillors wishing to speak. You will have the right of response as the mover of the original motion in a moment, Chair.
Presumably I'd get a right of reply as the mover of the amendment as well.
No, Councillor, it's the mover of the original motion who has the right of reply, not the mover of the amendment.
Okay, do we have any more speakers?
Yes, you've got Councillor Danielle Stone and Councillor Brian Markham and Councillor Dennis Meredith.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much. I completely and wholeheartedly agree with what Councillor Duffy was saying. The thing for me about all of this debate is about equal opportunities. I'm really passionate about supporting people who don't traditionally see themselves in the role as a public servant or an elected member coming forward. And I'm really passionate about that. We need much more diversity in our elected members at every tier than we currently see. And I think those allowances are really important. But it's not a payment, is it? It's not a wage. It's a way of mitigating some of the barriers that people experience and some of the costs. You know, there are real costs attached to being an elected member. For me, the distribution of funds to the community, I want it to be done in a fair and just way based on equalities. I'm very impressed by the way that community funds have been dispersed through the small grants and through the partnership fund. You know, I know those processes are really rigorous, and that is the process that I would want to see. I think our voluntary sector and our communities have got a huge amount of repair work to do, given all the harrowing times we've been through. And I think that money needs to be dispersed. If there is any money going into the pot from councillors, then I think it needs to go into the general pot and it needs to be dispersed with that kind of rigour. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Markham.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak again on the amendment, but if thank you anyway.
You asked a question initially, Councillor. Comment.
I did, yes. Right, okay. Just on Councillor Duffy's point, I fully understand that point. However, we all know we're going to have each of the town councillors are going to have some funds to disperse within their community. Now we all know that, and COVID has shown that existing borough councillors, the community can stretch quite widely, because there's an organisation literally over the road from my house, which I funded as in the ward in the past. But of course, it serves all communities across the town, and there are many other organisations. I don't think anybody. I'll go back to the move of the amendment, I suppose. Anybody's saying that every single part of that money must be spent within the town council ward, because there are going to be things that cross boundaries and that are worthy of support. So I don't think he's going to say, well, yeah, I don't know who these wealthy town councillors are that we refer to, but that if I don't take that I will necessarily, that money would only be used in West Owen ward, for instance. I don't think that's indicated at all by the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I want to say is to the panel. I was actually one of the councillors give evidence, and I'd like to say to the panel, well, thank you very much. It's a very good and clear and precise report, and it's absolutely first class. Made the right recommendations, I think. There's nothing wrong with the amendments. It's quite clear. It quite clearly states what will happen. I don't think there needs to be a lot of debate on it. It's either you accept the amendment with the as a motion, or you don't. And I think it's a good amendment. And thank you, Councillor Eales, for putting that amendment there. It's first class. I just don't want to say any more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Can we bring back
three more speakers? Councillor Terry Eales, Councillor Les Marriott, and Councillor Jamie Lane.
Councillor Terry Eales.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point that Councillor Duffy made, I think if we're saying that councillors that don't need to have the allowance, firstly, if I was to be elected to the council, to the town council, I would not be I wouldn't be comfortable with that allowance. To say that it's because I live in a more affluent area, or that I've got the money to be able to sort of throw that away is very untrue. Secondly, I think from my point of view, I would lean towards accepting the money, and then after I've been taxed on it, put whatever money that is to my community, because it's people in my community that are paying towards having us as councillors. So therefore, what I think other councillor Eales was saying is, if HMRC are going to get their grasp on it, that's a minimum of 20% of that money that's going to be taken away, unless councillors are given at least some option of what to do with that money.
Thank you, Councillor Eales. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chair. I actually support the amendment. Just on a couple of points. When you actually look at what Councillor Markham says, it was quite right. The fact that You know, presently, as borough councillors, we actually spend our money not just necessarily in your own ward, but there are some of the collective actual resources we do spend it on. And I think there will be some within the town council area. I'm sure that there'll be sort of people coming along and we'll all actually contribute to some good causes within the town centre area. But the other thing that we need to look at is what we've already agreed. If you look at page, I think it's 13 of the report, we've already agreed there's going to be a grants subcommittee. And that should actually reassure Councillor Stone, because that grants subcommittee it's not going to be acting the same way as we do on the borough. I think that's one thing we've got to recognise. It won't be us as councillors looking at the way in which you spend the money. That grant subcommittee is going to really actually scrutinise what councillors do spend the money on and make sure that it's spent in the right areas in the right way. So I think it's all covered at the moment. You know, we do actually collectively put to good causes, not just in our own wards. And the grant subcommittee will actually vet any sort of spend that councillors want to make anyway. So I'll support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Marriott. Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting one, isn't it? Because I agree totally with what Councillor Gareth Eels is saying about if you do not wish to take the allowance, then it can be untaxed, spent into the community. And I also agree with Councillor Terry Eels, because I just think if I choose not to take my allowance, surely I can choose where it's spent. And at the moment, we do projects across the town by signing other councillors' forms and donating some of our current allowance, our town council's allowance, to them. So yes, I would agree with the amendment to have our allowances paid into our community fund, but not taken away from us so we don't have any say on where our money is spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Does this go back now to Councillor Birch, Richard?
Yes, please. If there are no other speakers, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Yes, I've listened to all this really carefully, and it's an interesting situation, isn't it? Because at the moment we are able to nominate good causes, charities, organisations, residents' associations for receipt of the funds that we hold as councillors. I'd just like to echo what Councillor Marriott has said, that in the Community Services Committee, which is a standing committee, there is a grants subcommittee. That grants subcommittee holds the councillors' allowances. So if you did not wish to take your allowance and you put it into that subcommittee pot, if you like, the subcommittee will have a look at, there will be criteria decided, there will be, there will be priorities set for the town council. The town council will have, a list of criteria to be met in order for that grant to be released. And I think it is well protected. That grants committee obviously has to decide on all of those criteria, and it will be administered by them. The councillors will apply to it for the grants that they are allocated. So the grant committee will disperse money against that grant for the councillor. So in a way, it is protected more than it is at present. It's more like the small grants pot works. There will be maybe, I don't know how this works really with town councils, but there might be an application form that's put forward, and the grants committee will measure it against the criteria. So in a sense, that protects people, councillors who may, not that I would ever suggest it, but protects councillors from spending money sort of inappropriately or on projects that perhaps do not offer good value for money and true community benefit. So I would support the motion, the amendment, and I think it's a good way forward for those councillors who are elected and do not need to take their allowance. But it also means that other councillors will have that allowance to, their personal allowance to enable them to do the work that they are going to be doing. And it's going to be hard work. There's going to be 50 places on committees, and people are going to have to be, be well engaged with the new town council. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. I'm sorry. I'm glad that Councillor Birch agrees with the amendment, but she was always talking about a very different amendment. I didn't say at all, and I know some people alluded to it, but I think my amendment's been misrepresented. I didn't say that if any councillor wishes to forego it, it goes into a general pot, and other people, they're masters and mistresses of that destiny. That's not what the amendment was. The amendment was that any councillor that wishes to forego it, it then goes into their community fund. And now I'm assuming that the community fund that's allotted, it would work the same as it does at the moment. And that's what that's the amendment I'm tabling. And I think it's really important that people understand that before they vote, because I don't want people misrepresenting it after the fact.
Thank you, Gareth. I quite agree with you.
Richard, how do we move forward on this?
Yeah, if I may just make a general comment. With regard to the councillor's community fund, to be clear, you haven't determined, the council hasn't determined how it wishes, what rules, if any, it wishes to apply to that. That's something for the council to determine. What you have done is set aside a budget for a councillor's community fund. But different to the current arrangements for the borough council, you don't have the ability to award power, if you like, to an individual councillor to do anything. It can only be done in a town council or a parish council by a committee or a subcommittee or an officer that's delegated. And you've delegated it currently to a committee, to a subcommittee of a committee. Now, it's not for me to say, and it's a matter for the council to determine what rules you will apply to the amounts allocated for individual councillors. But I would imagine that given the constraints that I've just mentioned, the committee, the council, will wish to adopt a policy that the £3,000 per councillor, the individual ward councillors would recommend to the subcommittee how that sum should be allocated. But they can't in law, and I'm sure Mr. Gould can confirm this, they can't in law take that decision themselves, even if they used to doing so at the borough council, I'm afraid. I hope that partially answers Councillor Eales's question. I'm happy to come, if he wishes to come back and ask a subsequent question.
Look, it clarifies that there's still some ironing out to be done around the process. But in terms of right here, right now, what the amendment is that I'm saying that the amendment is that the 1,200.
I've got the amendment.
Yeah. There could be, but I'm saying that it would then be the wish of that individual councillor for it to be ring fenced.
I understand.
In their area. But I'm glad, Richard. It's like one mind. We're on the same page. I just want to make sure we all are.
Thank you very much. And Chair, again for clarity, I would ask the original mover, Councillor Birch, if she could kindly confirm that she's still in support of the amendment.
Councillor Birch, are you still in support of the amendment?
She's muted. Councillor Birch, you're muted.
It's muting me. Thank you. I probably didn't make myself absolutely clear when I was trying to explain the grants subcommittee. If you chose, put me right on this, Richard, and let me make sure that this is permissible under the town council governance. If a councillor decided to donate their allowance to the grant pot that they hold, and at the moment that grant amount is £3,000, if they decide to donate it to that £3,000 to make it 4,200 that is held in their name by the grants committee for them to apply to for funding for organisations and charities within their area.
Correct.
That is possible within the governance. Right.
But
I wasn't suggesting that it went into the general pot. I was suggesting that it was put into the councillor's pot, but it was administered by the grants committee.
Fine. Thank you. So are we voting on the amendment?
Sorry, Chair, is Councillor Birch therefore, just for clarity, forgive me, Councillor Birch, are you accepting that amendment? We don't need to vote on it if you are.
I will accept that amendment.
Thank you, Chair. So you can now go to the substantive motion, which is the 3 points. Oh, I don't know whether Councillor Hallam wanted to speak. No. Had his hand up. No.
No, I didn't have my hand up. I'm happy to move forward. I think we've got moved forward to the right. I think we've got a conclusion now.
Well, Councillor Duffy is indicating to speak, Chair, but Councillor Duffy has already spoken in the debate.
Yes, can we
move
on? Yeah, can we move on to the vote?
So we can have a vote.
Mr. Chair,
can we go to the vote? Yes, sir.
It will be the substantive motion as amended.
That's right, councillors. I was just about to say, just for clarity, we are thank you very much, Mr. Gould.
Can we vote on the substantive motion as mentioned?
As amended.
As amended.
It's the 3 points that were proposed originally by Mr. Cade, plus the amendment proposed by Councillor Eales, accepted by the mover, that you're now going to vote on. 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the recommendations, please.
Can I see hands if you are in favour of that?
Richard, can I say, have you missed the other one I added?
No,
about the index linking?
Yes, the index link was included in the motion, Mr. Cade.
That's fine. So it was the 4 points, the 4 recommendations. They're not the 3. That's fine. Thank you.
So all in favour, Chair, please.
Thank you for your indulgence, everyone. Number 6, transfer of property.
Sorry, Chair, I think it's and against. I think some members may not be, not everyone's voted in favour.
My apologies. Are there any against?
I'm abstaining.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item 6. It's the report, transfer of property and services. I call upon Councillor Birch.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Now, the cross-party working group has been meeting for information, and I would like to invite Laurie Gould, who has been part of that cross-party working group, to update us on the present situation regarding the transfer of property and services to the Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand, I think George Candler is with us, the Chief Executive of Northampton Borough Council. I was wondering if he wanted to speak first, or he's happy for me to continue.
So through you, Chair, I'm happy that Laurie leads, but I'm more than happy to contribute or provide any points of clarification.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To be brief, the cross-party working group was considerably concerned about the issue over the Guildhall and the progress that was being made, and on a number of issues as well. The chairman of the cross-party working group, Councillor Phil Larratt, suggested that there should, as soon as possible, be a working group consisting of the portfolio holder for the Unitary Authority, who I understand is Councillor Brown, plus officers of the Unitary Authority, along with members of the cross-party working group, and that is across all parties, should meet fairly quickly. And I understand that meeting has now been fixed for the 11th of March, perhaps not as soon as a lot of members need it, but unfortunately, people have their diaries tend to be very, very busy. So the meeting has been organised for the 11th of March. At that meeting, we hope that we'll have constructive discussions with the Unitary Authority on the way forward for the Guildhall, which will echo the needs and, of course, the views of the Town Council. In addition to that, Councillor Larratt also indicated that he will be arranging a meeting with the leader of the Unitary Authority in order to discuss these issues again, and also constructively, and I'm sure they will do, and in order to put forward that, and plus any other issues that needed our direct concern of both the Unitary Authority and, of course, the Borough Council and the Town Council as well. I think it goes without saying that the Unitary Authority has a degree of sympathy for the views of the Town Council and is anxious to arrive at a solution which is in the interest of all those who care about the Town Council and its future. Now, whether George wishes to add anything to that, fine.
Through you, Chair. So thank you, Laurie. Just a point of clarification. The date that Laurie referred to, the 11th of March, is actually the date when, or the proposed date, when the chair of the cross-party working group will be meeting with the leader of the West Northampton Shadow Authority. So a date is yet to be set for that wider member group that Laurie was referring to, but that's certainly in hand and will be discussed by the chair of the cross-party working group. The officer group, though, is continuing to meet to progress matters to ensure momentum with the next meeting this week, and obviously we'll do a full report for the next council meeting on the 29th of March. But I just wanted to clarify that particular date and the wider member briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch?
I think we've got somebody with a hand up.
Councillor Brian Markham.
Councillor Markham.
A question, yes, Chair, if I could. Am I right in thinking that Councillor Birch is a member of that cross-party working group? Because I do feel, you know, it's all been gone through by Councillor Larratt right since the beginning of the governance review and that cross-party working group. But we now have, you know, our own town council, and I think there should be somebody there. Now, if Councillor Birch is on that working group or involved in those meetings, then I'm happy, because I mean, as Laurie I think knows, I'm a member of Far Cotton and Delapre Community Council as well as this one, and you know, they're very concerned, and you know, I'm not completely sure that you know, the West Northampton Unitary, actually, given everything else they're dealing with, really has our interests at heart at all. But yeah, but I don't know. I've not been at those meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Markham. Laurie, can you clarify?
Yes, indeed. Yes, and Councillor Birch will be a member of that group when it meets. And as I understood this morning, I'm also putting forward Councillor Marriott's name because so you'll get that double representation from the town council. There will be other members of course, the cross-party working group there, like Sally Bearsworth, and of course Phil Larratt, and indeed any other members of the cross-party working group I'm sure that wish to be there.
Thank you. Any more speakers?
Nobody appears to be indicating.
May I, Chair, just ask before Councillor Birch speaks, just if Mr. Gould could kindly also confirm that the cross-party working group has agreed a not final but almost final list of artefacts and civic regalia to be transferred to the town council on 1st of April.
They have indeed. We had the full list that went forward to the cross-party working group. It's a considerably long list, if I can put it that way, with many, many artefacts and so on. And I think after having spoken to Councillor Phil Larratt this morning, there's another room that we have actually found in the Guildhall, which may have a few more treasures. So they are also going to go onto the list. And I've been directing my mind to those on Wednesday when I go into the Guildhall.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Can I propose, please, that this council endorses the action being proposed by the Borough Council and considers the matter further at the next meeting on the 29th of March, where we hope to have updates.
Thank you. Councillor Marriott.
Yeah, please to second that, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Lane is indicating to speak.
Councillor Lane.
Thank you. At that next meeting, could we also have some information on how those artifacts are going to be protected for the future, so that no item can be sold for a profit or gain, please? I know I've raised this many. I keep being reassured that they can't be, but I want something in writing to say that they're held in a trust or protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
They are in effect, if I may speak.
Yes.
they are unaffected by the trust of the town council. But yes, we'll do that.
Thank you. Is there any more speakers?
Nobody appears to be indicating, Chair.
Thank you. Before taking a vote, I invite Councillor Bird if she wishes to exercise her mover's right of reply.
Sorry to interrupt. I
Councillor
think Councillor Meredith is indicating he wishes to speak as well.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was wondering if Mr. Gould could give us, so all the councillors are aware about this inaugural meeting of the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, please.
Sorry, which meeting is this?
Councillor Meredith, do you want to
Yeah,
just
we discussed it today when I asked about the inaugural meeting of the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor. You said it was something about in April, or was it before end of March rather?
Councillor Meredith is referring to the formal handover that's been discussed of
yes.
the artefacts and the installation of himself and Councillor Ashraf as Town Mayor and Deputy Town Mayor.
Thank you, Richard, for that.
My apologies, Councillor Meredith. I didn't quite hear all you were saying. I don't know why. You all went fuzzy again. Yes, a civic panel is to be appointed to discuss these issues of the Borough Council. There are two meetings we need to be concerned about because they're extremely important. One is the meeting, will be the final meeting of the Borough Council when we have the election of Freeman and so on, and that will be a great civic occasion. Unfortunately, not the kind of occasion we would have wanted with celebration and so on because, of course, of the situation we're in. And it looks likely as if there will be then a second meeting with the formal handover of the mayoralty, the regalia, etc., from the Borough Council to the Town Council, an equally historic and important meeting. So it may well be two separate meetings, but it'll be up to the civic panel, which is made up across all parties of the Borough Council.
Thank you for that clarification, Laurie. Councillor Birch.
Right. With that further information, I would like to propose that the Council endorses all the actions being proposed by the Borough Council and considers the matter further at its next meeting on the 29th of March with the suggestions to be put forward on the agenda for that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour, can you please raise your hands?
Okay.
Against? And any abstentions?
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7 is to consider a notice of motion in the name of
Mayor,
Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't vote on that because I was cut off the screen, but I was in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Will be noted. Item 7 is to consider a notice of motion in the names of Councillor Hallam and Councillor Hill. I invite Councillor Hallam to propose a motion. Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to talk for long on this because I've espoused this topic many times on various authorities. It's really to get this authority in line with the other authorities around us. And make sure that this is front and centre of everything that we do. So often in business or some years ago in the council, the environment that was something that was considered but tended to be right at the back of the report or might be at the back of a business presentation. Well, that's not something that people are willing to accept anymore. It needs to be front and centre of everything we do. I'm pleased to report that actually business in Northampton are really interested in getting involved with some of this climate change work, and we're looking at setting up a webinar to tell them how authorities are helping and do a bit of business networking as well to find out what other businesses have done. So in my borough council role, we're going to be launching that in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully it's something that the town council might be able to carry on as well. Businesses are really keen to find out what we can offer and what other people have done. So I'm pretty confident everybody will be in favour of this. I'm happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just like to echo Councillor Hallam's points regarding this motion. As members will be aware, we obviously declared a climate emergency at the Borough Council not too long ago, and obviously this was echoed at NCC as well. This is going to be a really important issue going forward. We all know that it's not going to be an issue which is going away, and we need to make sure it's being tackled and addressed at every level of government. And obviously the Town Council will become a part of that. Again, we'll be closer to our residents than everyone else, so I'd be keen to see us work with residential groups as well. So yeah, happy to propose the motion and obviously accept the amendments by the Labour Whip too.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Councillor Brian Markham.
Thank you.
Councillor Joyce.
Yes, I understand that Councillor Joyce intends to propose an amendment. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think it was a very good motion, but there's a few bits obviously I just wanted to add to it. And what I've added to the actual amendment is I've asked that this council establishes a local community climate change forum to meet quarterly and annually review targets and progress. I think it's something we've already got in place and it works really well actually. And I think I completely agree with Councillors Hallam and Hill. And I said these forums have been really good in the past. And I said it moves us towards a carbon neutral Northampton in 2030. So thank you for that. And thank you for accepting the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Birch to second.
Well, sorry, Chair, if Councillor Hallam would indicate that he has accepted it, that can become part of the substantive motion.
Yeah, thank you. I think the amendment adds value and I'm happy to accept it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I now put the motion to the vote. Oh, can we go to the vote?
Councillor Brian Markham had indicated to speak.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Markham and then we'll go to the vote. Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to prolong it too much. I very much support the motion, and in particular, I find it's yes, improved a lot by the amendment. Gives something what we'd actually be doing. Just perhaps the Town Council doesn't have the same property and land and everything as the other authorities, but we need to be part of it and bringing the community together as so that they can discuss it. I think it would be the most useful part we can do as a Town Council. Just I don't want to put you off. Only a month and you will be the Town Mayor, Chair. But perhaps one thing we've agreed to take on the Jaguar and the number plate. Well, perhaps we should consider at some stage keeping the number plate and finding a much more environmentally electric vehicle, which would give publicity to the town and also publicity to the climate change emergency. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Councillor Les Marriott is indicating to speak.
I did say I was going to take Councillor Markham last, but Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Chair. I thought that possibly the leader was going to come in on this one, but to me, obviously you can't sort of do anything other than fully support this type of motion. It's really excellent work that we need to do. And the other thing is, because obviously as a Town Council, we need to make sure that we actually cover this item, and it had been foreseen that we were going to look at climate change issues this year, and it's been budgeted for in the budget we agreed just at the last meeting. So really pleased to sort of support the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And against?
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. We come to the next date of the meeting. I can confirm the next meeting date of the Town Council will be held on Monday, 29th of March at 6 p.m. As there are no further business, I declare this meeting now closed. Thank you all.